Sin. You've probably heard the word before, but what does it actually mean? For some people, sin is a really big word. It's a scary word. It can bring feelings of shame and guilt and worthlessness. But then, for other people, sin is a really small word. It feels like something completely irrelevant. It's like a silly old relic we should have left in the past. I think sin can be a word with a lot of misconceptions. And so what I'd love to do in this video right now is try and make things clear for you, hopefully quickly. So let's jump straight into it. So when we think about sin, we need to think about sins that occur on the outside in our actions, and also sin that occurs on the inside in our heart. And we'll start in our actions. So on the outside, sin is any act that's in disobedience to God. So for example, things like murder and theft and lying, they're all things that God commands us not to do. And so if we do them, that's a sin. Now, I could go over a whole list of things that are sins, but I don't think that's going to be very helpful for us in this video today. Because if we focus primarily on sins that happen on the outside, we're going to almost completely miss the point of what sin is. Let me give you an analogy. Have you ever left a loaf of bread too long in the kitchen? And when you finally remember it, you see that it's got these little blue spots that have started to appear on it. And it can be tempting in that moment to just cut off the spots and eat the rest of the bread, because the rest of the bread looks fine, right? And you think that way until you finally realize that those little blue spots, those visible bits that you can see, they're just the final life stage of the mold. And most of the mold has actually already grown invisibly throughout the whole loaf. And when we think about sin as actions, it's like focusing on those blue spots on the bread and thinking that that's the whole story. And that's because sin actually begins inside of us long before it shows itself in our actions. What sin is, in its deepest essence, is an attitude of the heart. Sin is an attitude of every human heart. And what it is an attitude towards God that says, God, I'm going to do things my own way. Whatever you have to say about my life, I'm not interested in it. I'm going to find my own path. I'm going to go my own way. God, your way, your word, it's not important to me. What sin is, in its very deepest sense, is an act of rejection. It's a rejection of God. And sin, it's the natural state of every single human heart. We all turn away from God naturally because we prefer to just follow whatever desires that we find inside ourselves. Or maybe just to follow whatever everyone else around us is doing so we don't stick out. Now, we've got to this point in the video and you might be thinking to yourself, hang on, I think we need to take a couple of steps back here, because I don't even believe that God exists, and yet you're making this claim that I'm rejecting him. And if that's you, that's a really fair question. And what I'll give is two responses to that. So firstly, you may not feel like you believe in God's existence, but God has actually made himself and his existence clear to everyone. So how? You're probably asking. God makes himself clear in all the things that he's made. The majesty and the splendor of this world demonstrate that it has a creator. Or just look at humanity. Look inside of ourselves. The very mind and the very heart of each one of us was made in the image of God. We're made to be like him. We're made to share some of his qualities. Just looking inside of us gives us so much evidence that we actually have a creator. I think God has given us the evidence that we need to know him, but there's a much deeper issue going on that keeps us from him. If you're the person who doesn't believe that God exists, let me pose you a question. Imagine that God, he appeared before you right now, and he proved himself to you in a way that was so undeniable that you had to believe he exists. And he says to you, I am your maker. From now on, I need you to submit yourself to me. Your decisions, your actions, every part of your life, I need you to submit to me. I'm the one who made you. You're mine. And so I need you to entrust your life to me. And whatever I tell you to do, that's what I want you to do. And if you, as you imagine that kind of situation, if your gut reaction is like, no way, I would never submit myself to someone else like that. If that's your kind of reaction, the deepest barrier your deepest barrier in coming to God is not actually the question of whether he exists or not. It's the fact that you don't want to come to him and you don't want to acknowledge him even if he does exist. And that kind of heart is actually the very heart of sin. And now, maybe about this point, you're also thinking another question. Why should I come to God? Like, why would God's way actually be better than my own? I know myself. I know my life. Why would I willingly hand it over, submit it to someone else like that? And if that's you, that's also a really good question. And I'll finish with this. As humans, we're used to thinking of ourselves as creators in this world. We're the ones who build great cities. We shape the land to meet our needs, and we carve out paths for ourselves in this world. But actually, at heart, we're not creators. We're really just creatures. And it takes a big hit to our pride to recognize the fact that we have a creator. We were actually made. And if that's true, then our maker knows much better than us what kind of life is best for each of us, what kind of life is best for a person. And so if you pose the question, is living God's way, is living with God actually better than living without him? Let me give you an answer as someone who knows him. For me, knowing God is most certainly better than living without him. When we receive Jesus and when we turn away from sin, we find in him what we were truly made for. God satisfies the longings of our heart, and in him we can rest easy, knowing that we're totally secure in him, now and for all eternity. I'll see you next time.